What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Marlo, and we back with another reaction. Like you can see in the title, it kind of get a little crazy today, and I don't want to hold y'all up too long, so let's get into the video.
A sad morning. Very sad morning. When this committee, the oldest and most continuous in the Congress, neglects its responsibility and essentially holds this hearing today to block any further discussion. The men and women on this committee are good people. They're honest and caring people. And that's why I do not understand why you would relegate this committee to no longer being of significance and resort to saying you will do whatever Elon Musk and Donald Trump tell you to do. Where's the independence of the committee? Where's the legislature?
All right, look,
We're an equal branch of government.
Listen, I'm gonna be myself when I'm doing the reaction. You know, I'm listening to what he's saying, but I'm also paying attention to other people. And I just want y'all to look at the guy sitting next to him. I want y'all to look at the guy sitting next to him and just look at his facial reaction as his voice raises.
And Donald Trump tell you to do. Where's the independence of the committee? Where's the legislature? We're an equal branch of...
And another thing, I just got to watching a video of the Democrats. They was cussing, saying F Donald Trump, F Elon Musk. You know, just doing everything I feel like the wrong way. And he's just like adding icing onto the cake.
Government. And you start off with a blather, and yet look at the empty seats here. Where's Elon Musk? I'm sure he's a genius and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he found are so eminent, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security. He's been on television the last couple of days talking exactly about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and what he intends to do. Privatize it. The American people, some of them may have been born at night, but not last night.
The world's richest man, fresh off selling Teslas on the south lawn of the White House, is also trying to juggle a business empire, which is getting hammered on the stock market. Now he's setting his sights on what he has called, quote, Ponzi scheme, Social Security.
The raising report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. That's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year.
Here to talk about it, Kara Swisher, CNN contributor, host of Pivot, and On with Kara Swisher. Kara, thanks so much for joining me. I know you've been hanging out at South by Southwest.
I have.
You've been busy, so it means you're out there hearing what people are saying. And
Indeed.
We mentioned getting hammered by his businesses, but also like people are doing acts of vandalism against cyber trucks. You once called them a heat shield. What's going on with the heat shield for Trump?
Well, it's not good from a business point of view. The stock's been going down precipitously, largely because of reports out of Europe, and here in the United States, the sales have fallen off. It's not a surprise, one, because he's a polarizing figure, and the people who buy his cars are largely people who might vote Democratic, and he's got to attract the same amount of, I guess, red state people or MAGA people to buy the cars. Secondly, the cars haven't been innovated that much recently, and there's a lot of competitors, as you know. And so that's probably impacting at the same time. And then inevitably, cars that dominate tend to not dominate. And so he hasn't been paying attention a lot at Tesla because he's focused on other things. So that's among the many things that are happening for him. But a polarizing figure is probably at the center of it.
Can I ask about that clip we heard? Because it's one thing to talk about Social Security on Joe Rogan, right? And do the what maybe
Not great.
perhaps.
Yeah.
It's another thing to do it on the network, right? That everybody watches, especially people in that age group, right? Who might be thinking about Social Security. What do you make of how far he's getting out front on this topic?
Well, maybe he's testing it out. Maybe he's seeing what's what. Maybe he talked to Trump about doing that. Obviously, he can do math. Entitlements are the biggest part. And, he hasn't really saved almost any money compared to how big the federal government is. And so he wants to have some wins on the board, and he's got to go, why do you rob a bank? You go where the money is. When you're trying to cut money from the government, you have to go to entitlements. And of course, that's what's beyond the third rail. It's way beyond the third rail, but he can't help himself. He has to say what the problem is, and that is where you would cut if you actually were going to save money for the taxpayer.
Already we have seen more than 100,000 workers fired or laid off from federal agencies. Most recently, as we reported, it was the Department of Education announcing it's cutting about half of its workforce this week alone. Today kicks this presidential priority into a whole new gear, I guess you could say, just as Donald Trump has also done with his ongoing trade war that started with really Canada and Mexico and has now gone global, causing chaos in the markets and sparking fears of a recession. Today, what would typically be a non-headline grabbing get-together between two allies is now a high-stakes face-to-face. Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary set to meet with the Premier of Ontario and the Canadian Finance Minister as the countries continue to spar over the president's tariffs. CNN's Elena Treen starts us off this morning at the White House. Elena, let's first start with these layoffs and the deadline today. What is going to happen?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, Kate, this is the deadline day for federal agencies across the government to submit what they're calling reorganization plans, essentially plans laying out how they are going to massively reduce the size of their agencies, reduce their agencies' headcount. And this is all part of really what we've seen so far from the Trump administration, but specifically from the Department of Government Efficiency, really moving in unprecedented ways to radically reshape the size of the federal government. Now, agencies heads were told last month, really ordered last month, to provide these plans by today's deadline. It's still unclear exactly when we should expect many of these layoffs to happen. But of course, they come after we've seen already very sizable cuts across the federal government. You mentioned already more than 100,000 federal workers have either been laid off. We also know many of them have accepted DOJ's Fork in the Road initiative, also referred to as their deferred resignation program, and other probationary employees have been laid off as well. So this is kind of just the next turn of the wheel in those efforts. When I talked to Trump administration officials about it, they essentially said that those efforts that they put in place so far to try and reduce the size of the federal government didn't work as well as they thought. They have not eliminated enough positions and jobs, and this is why you're seeing kind of this next move to move forward with these mass layoffs, essentially. Now, I just want to give you a little sense of where we've seen so far the majority of cuts and other layoffs to be. We know at the top of the list is the the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Next is the Education Department, which we just saw them move to cut around 50% of staff this week. The USAID, Veterans Affairs Department, and Social Security. So stay tuned for more on this, but also just keep in mind as well that when we talk to federal employees, a lot of them are kind of blind to some of the cuts that are coming, a lot of them fearful of really what to expect. But today we should see more details of what those plans look like.
All right, we shall see. Elena Treen, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Annie Grayer joins us from Washington. Annie, as the president slashes away at the government, which is what he promised, what roadblocks is that creating for ex-employees who are seeking unemployment benefits now?
Well, Sarah, there are so many roadblocks, and the first and probably biggest one is proving that they qualify for unemployment benefits. Because if you're somebody who has been fired for cause, you're unlikely to qualify for unemployment benefits. And many of the people who were let go last month were given termination notices that said that they were terminated for poor performance. The problem there, though, is that many of those people hadn't even been on the job long enough to receive a performance review. And one of the people that our colleague Tammy Luby and I talked to for this story said they'd actually received a positive performance review. So now these workers whose lives are already chaotic enough because they've been thrown into limbo and lost their jobs are now going through a very complicated process with their state unemployment agency and their former federal employer to try and prove that they, in fact, qualify for unemployment benefits. And the biggest thing here is there are a lot of key documents that are part of this process. And as you can imagine, the federal agencies that are being gutted and already underwater, and some of the people that these federal workers might need to contact might also be laid off themselves. These workers are not able to get the documents that they need, especially not in a timely manner. So a lot of people are sitting without a paycheck, their lives completely turned upside down. You know, these people were not given an offboarding process where they were able to, talk about their benefits or unemployment process. They're now having to do that on the fly, and it's been very, very chaotic.
I'm curious about unemployment agencies and what this is doing for them, creating, I'm assuming, a backlog potentially?
Huge backlog. I mean, look at Washington, D.C., for example, where a lot of federal workers live. There were over 550 claims for unemployment in 1 week in February, whereas a couple days before Donald Trump took office, that number was at 17. So you can just see how big of an influx that is. In Maryland, where there's also a lot of unemployment claims, that state has had to bring over workers from other parts of their state agency, hire more people because they have so much incoming. And the workers that we talked to said that they've been told to expect long wait times here. And just to remember that federal workers don't just live in the Washington, D.C. area. 80% live across the country. So states across the country are dealing with this. For example, Washington State has over 950 claims that they're trying to work through.
A major escalation.
And that's the video. Like I always say, y'all, God bless you.